Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the LiftAffect podcast. I am your host, Matt McNeil, founder, clinical director, and director of human performance at LiftAffect, where we assist professional pilots with maintaining better mental health and optimizing their mental skills. The goal of this podcast is simple: to help pilots and other high liability professionals and disciplines come out of the shadows to discover how we can live better lives personally and professionally. Join us each episode as we discuss various topics ranging from mental health, mental skills and performance, to business, entrepreneurship, and a few other surprises along the way.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the LiftAffect podcast. This is your host, Karl Keller, along with the man that talks about things, Matt McNeil.
Talks about lots of things.
He talks about things.
What's going on?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, how are you?
And, better now that I'm talking to you.
That's what they say.
Yeah, well, got to catch you right in the middle of a drink, you know? Like,
yeah, I know. So I can
I'm very classy.
spill all over myself. Yeah.
But how's the week going?
Week's good. It's hot. It's good.
Oh, yeah, it's hot here, too. It's just...
Finally, summer.
Yeah.
Things are good, man.
Yeah, we went and I think I mentioned I'm part of a fire department and I do some stuff in the volunteer side. And we we did for the academy their burns to get ready for their final testing. And you know, you're in a burn, so it's pretty hot inside the building, and we had to actually call it because the temperature outside was so hot that it got so hot they had to call it. So it was just
People
we
get
were sweating in there.
do they heat stroke in there? I mean,
Well, they don't get heat stroke, but you know, they get evaluated before and after each what they call evolution to make sure that they're still within set parameters as far as heartbeat and temperature, the body temp, and everything. But yeah, it's this is the worst time of year to do those things because it's so hot outside, and then you're going in this building that you're it's a controlled burn, but it definitely
gets hot in there.
Way hot. So you're wearing all this gear, so you're already really warm before you go in, and you just don't have. It's so hard to cool down in between to get your
Why don't they
temperature
have
back
environmental control systems within the gear?
Yeah. Think about it. When you go in there, our gear is set up so that you can actually sit inside your oven and not. I'm serious, literally. It's good to 400 to 500 degrees.
Gosh.
And I mean, flashovers happen at over 1,000 degrees, 1,100, 1,200. And you can't survive that. But I mean, you're sometimes in very short duration, you're in 600, 700, 800 degree temps. It's so yeah, but 400 to 500, and you're basically
what do they wear underneath all the equipment?
Well, you have multiple layers. You have a liner, and you have an outer layer, and it's all tested to be able to withstand so much heat. And then you wear a hood, basically over the top of your head.
But are you wearing pants like underneath that? Just regular pants?
Just have it's got to be cotton pants, 100% cotton, and then you're wearing basically a dual layer. With the it's called PPE, or we call it bunker gear, and then you also wear boots. They're all rated to withstand that temperature. And then you're wearing obviously a mask and a regulator and an air pack and a helmet. It's So you're wearing about 80 to 90 pounds of gear going in there, and then you're carrying a hose, and you may and tools. And then if you find someone that you need to rescue,
you got to carry them.
You got to carry them out, get them to a window, carry them down ladders. I mean, 250, 300 pound people. It's a pretty physical job. And I can't believe I don't know what caused me to think at the ripe young age of 58 I could do it, but I did it, and somehow it happened. But I went through with my son. I think I told you. We were the bookends. He was the youngest. I was the oldest. And it's really neat. It's kind of neat to be able to give back. You're helping people in your community that are locals, or even sometimes your own members or yourself because of incidents. It's kind of like this thing here. It's really neat to be able to help people.
For sure.
even if you don't know who they are. In this case, it's very local here. This is not local, but it's still really just, it's a great feeling that if you're incrementally helping people, it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it's hard to be happy if you're not helping somebody else be happy.
Yeah, it's not always about what you get. It's what you give.
Yep.
And I know that sounds trite, and people go, "Oh yeah, right, whatever," but it really does.
Well, the clinical data supports it in terms of our outcomes, in terms of our health, all of our health metrics. A lot of it comes down to, are you contributing something to somebody else?
And, I know people didn't come in on this podcast to listen to me talk about that, but I tell you, it does lead into something that you and I have talked about a number of times. And I'm near the end of my aviation career, regardless of what they do with the age increase or not. I can see the end. But we've always talked about, I remember when I first got in the cockpit, they always talked about paying it forward by the senior captains, talking about and giving you guidance and advice and mentorship about what it is you're getting yourself into, and the good, the bad, the ugly, the pitfalls that they went through, even though things have evolved. When they first got on, flight engineers, they had to literally build the airplane. Now most people go, what's a flight engineer? The new group. So to kind of get to the chase here, this is primarily devoted and focused on the aviation community, although a lot of things we talk about can help others. There's a whole new breed, younger people that are getting first exposed to this lifestyle. And this would be a great opportunity for us to talk about paying it forward and helping them, and talking about all the challenges that are going on. When you and I went through, there wasn't these kind of aviation academies that were going on. But it was not like it is today. Nothing like this. Yeah. Some countries like Germany, they had ab initio where they started you at zero, but you belonged, so to speak, to Lufthansa the whole time. You were theirs, and you were trained the Lufthansa way. Here, this is, whoever you're going through, you may be obligated to a certain carrier for a short period of time, but you're not a life member of. You're
not obligated at all, actually. Yeah. So let's. Can I take it from here? Let me riff on that for a second, because LiftAffect has a contract to provide mental skills coaching and mental health for a very large academy. I can say it. It's CAE, and CAE does training for Southwest. They do training for American. They do training for foreign carriers. It's a very big operation. They're huge, and we provide basically cadet has access to free sessions. They pay. They get 7 sessions per year, which is pretty nice. That's fully covered by CAE, and CAE recognizes that mental health and mental skills is really important for people in training, and it's also offered to all of their instructors as well, even in the corporate flight department sector, where they're doing all the check rides for corporate flight departments. All those instructors have access to LiftAffect services. Let's just talk about the instructors. Is this a different thing? A lot of these are very experienced older aviators. They've flown for the airlines. They're now instructors. Their issues, let's say, or their needs are very different than the students in the academies. One of the things that I see, and this isn't just CAE, but like we get calls from students all the time, all around the country. One of the big issues that I see with students is they think that they're obligated to the flight school, and their mentality is that the flight school is their boss. The flight school is, basically that holds the keys to everything, And they compare themselves to these ab initio programs. This is not an ab initio program. And an ab initio program means you are in the people that come from other countries, they are paid by that airline. They're employees of that airline. The airlines here in the United States, like, they're not doing you a favor. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be critical, but like, they're not paying for your training. The student is going out of there with $130,000 of debt, which is a significant amount of debt. And the airlines are not footing the bill. So I know the airlines are like, oh, you're in this program and we're going to fast track you here. It's not that simple. And the big differentiator is they're not paying for your training. They're helping you get a loan. But make no mistake, the loan is in the student's name. It's not in the carrier's name. So I think here's the issue. When you're not the employee, you have to do a lot more advocating for yourself. And a lot of the students are very scared to advocate for themselves. They feel like they have to answer, and they're kind of this subservient kind of mentality around the organization and the instructors. And look, it's always been that way. You the instructor's the one that holds the power, and they're very afraid. But this is leading to a lot of problems, because now we can talk generational stuff in a second. But a lot of the complaints that older generations always have of the younger generations is the kids today are lazy and they're entitled and they don't know, and they expect the world, and everybody wants a participation award. And we'll get to that in a second. But there's a backside to it as well, is that the kids today don't know how to advocate for themselves. So you end up seeing cases where somebody's got 80 hours and they haven't soloed yet. And I'm going, what is going on over there? To where the student is on the hook for all of that debt, not the academy. Ab initio programs, that doesn't happen. Because these students are employees. They have benefits. They're being paid. If there aren't 80-hour pre-solo, they get fired. And these academies are not, the airlines are not paying for the training. And that's a huge differentiator. And the kids that are going through, and I say kids, there are some people that are older that are in there as well. But like, here's what I advise them is like, you need to take your training into your own hands. You need to be responsible, right? Responsibility, the ability to respond. If you don't step up and take responsibility for your training, you very likely will be forgotten about or left behind or get stuck in the machine and just get kind of like parked somewhere. It's the same kind of thing happens with patients in a hospital. If you don't advocate for yourself, it's very easy to become a victim of a big machine. And the problem that academies are having is they are over-promising and under-delivering. They are saying, we can train all these people and we can do it in 9 months. And no, you can't. Yes, there are those cases, those outliers of people that can get through, but they're just trying to ramrod so many students through, and they don't have the instructors, and the instructors are trying to move on. And, one of the issues, this has always been the case with flight training. And I don't know if it's this, you can speak to the military, but in civilian flight training, the joke was it's first graders teaching kindergartners. I mean, you get your CFI, you're a student, and then you get your CFI, and now all of a sudden you're teaching students, and you don't know hardly anything. You have very little experience. And look, that system can work. It has worked. It worked for me. It worked for my generation. I'm a Gen Xer in every way, and we had to CFI, but we CFI'd for years and years and years. You couldn't get on with the carrier unless you had a couple thousand hours of multi-engine time. And now they are baby instructors. As soon as they hit their 1,000 hours, they are on with the 121 carrier, on a restricted ATP. And it's just a very different landscape. But my advice to anybody that's in flight training right now, you better start advocating for yourself. If you're not getting what you need to go and figure out how you can get what you need. Go to your leads, go to the chief instructor, go to your instructor first. If that doesn't go anywhere, go to the chief instructor. But look, if this isn't working for you, you have every right to go in and say, I feel like there needs something needs to change because I'm not progressing at a rate that is acceptable to my financial well-being.
Yep. You're absolutely, and you hit right on it. The difference, you were saying historically, the instructors in many cases were experienced because it took a lot longer for them to get to the point where they were acceptable for an airline. Here, many cases, the instructors were just the students, not just mere months ago.
Yesterday.
So you're not getting that same level of instruction through there. I wanted to make one clarification on something you said. There are a couple of programs out there where once you graduate and once you get on, there are quote unquote bonuses that they will pay back. In some cases, $120,000, but it's over a multi-year period. You have to get on with them, and during that period of time, from the time you take the loan, which is like you said in your name, you're making the payments, and if you don't make it through,
you're stuck with the payments.
You're stuck with all of it.
Yep.
The airline will do nothing. So you have to be really careful because it can cost up to as much as $250,000, depending on who you're with. And even in the best circumstance, whatever aid or bonuses or refund, if you want to call it that, rebate that the airline will give you isn't going to cover all of it. So there's a lot.
There's no free lunch. Okay.
Yeah, there's the allure is kind of seducing people in without really thinking about, okay, what happens if you don't, or what happens if it takes much longer? Like you said, people aren't graduating, it appears, in a number of the programs as fast as they were promised. And so the clock is ticking.
Well, I see cases where, and I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not necessarily saying CAE, but we get calls from all over the place. And, students are flying once a month or something it's just.
Yeah, they need to be flying 3 or 4 times a week to meet the timeline for the hours in the program.
I did my PPL in 3 weeks. Back when I did it. And there are people working on their PPLs for 6 months.
Yeah, it's
or
crazy.
7 months or a year. It's so, I think, there are these young students don't know, they don't understand a lot of how this is. And I think they go in feeling like they work for the school, they're an employee, and I'm like, dude, you're paying I don't know, look, where I grew up, if somebody's paying you, they own your butt.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're paying it, they don't own shit. And there's a lot of, I think for the most part, the schools are doing a good job. It's a tough situation but some students, and I hate to say it, but it's usually the ones with the weaker skills or the ones that get behind. If they don't know how to advocate for themselves, they just get rolled over. It's like they're just put in the back of the line and forgotten about. And they're overloaded with students to instructor ratios are horrible. They don't have enough airplanes. It's a mess.
Think about the advocacy for the young instructors. There's a big pressure on them to graduate people, to get them through. And like you say, not everybody is at the same level. So being a new young instructor, advocacy is really important.
Yes.
Because you can't put out somebody that get ready, put someone forth saying they're ready to go when they're not. This is a very challenging environment today.
I think there's going to be a lot of negative repercussions moving forward if they don't figure this out and slow the pace down. I know everybody wants to grow, but don't forget, just a short few months ago, there was no grow. It was retract. And it is easy come, easy go. So let's be careful here with this.
Historically, the airlines have been boom or bust. This controlled growth, so to speak, is something that is relatively new. In good times, they used to grow like crazy, and anytime the recession came, they shrank like crazy. This is, and technically, that's kind of what happened during COVID. There was a.
It is, but there's this one key piece is called retirements, which they have not accounted for, and now
it doesn't peak until 2028.
Yeah, it's a big. It's a big deal.
This is not going away in the near future. No.
So that's my quick advice to some students that are in academies: is advocate for yourself. If you're not getting what you need to go out and ask for it, because they're not just going to give it to you. When you have a curriculum, that it's a one size fits all kind of deal, but not everything is one size fits all. And sometimes you need to, but I tell them, like if you're not riding in the back seat every day, and I know it's hot, it's hot and in high altitudes, you can't really do that. The weights don't allow it, but you need to be hanging out in the school. You need to be hanging out in the sims. You need to be hanging out in the back of airplanes and observing this stuff immerse yourself in it. And that's the way to get through it. But if you just want to just go do the bare minimum, they'll be happy to sign you into a loan of hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're not making any progress because they're not on the hook for it.
And if you don't live local to that area, there's all these other things. You're in many cases by yourself. It's like going off to college.
It's tough.
There's all the other costs that you're not even thinking about. Forget just the school.
It's tough. So and look, CAE has been amazing. They recognize that the students have a lot of these. They're their first time away from home. Some of them are 19. They didn't go to college, and it's overwhelming. And then they're just like fire hose. And they need support, and I applaud CAE for saying we want to invest in their support.
I can't think of, and there probably is, but I can't think of any other training entity out there outside of CAE that's actually providing tools for their students to use to cope with all of these issues. That's just that's such an important and needed service that all of these others really need to look at, because you're right. They're getting thrown into the meat grinder without all the tools to help them cope for when the challenges come, and they will come.
And the difference is that the younger generation, and CAE really understood this, is the younger generation, they want to get help if they need help. They're not going to hide like the boomers and the Xers. They are not going to hide. And even the Z's or the Gen Z's are millennials are less apt to hide, but the Z's, they're not going to hide. And the young generation, they're like, no, if I want to get mental health help or I want coaching, I'm going to go get it. There's no shame in there. And so I think the airlines better get ready, because the younger generation is not married to this profession the same way that baby boomers and Gen Xers and at some level millennials, although that's proving that they're willing to leave. If they're not, what they value is very different. They're not going to I will give my eye teeth to go fly an airplane and wreck my life so that I can go fly a jet around. That's not, a lot of them came into the younger people came into this career because they see it as a viable job, not because they're passionate about airplanes, and this is all that they've ever wanted to do. So the airlines have taken advantage of that for decades. Of pilots will do anything to fly a plane. They'll just bend over backwards. So just as long as you promise them a seat in the cockpit, you can do whatever the hell you want with them. The younger generation are not motivated by that. I mean, I remember when I was flying, you'd invite kids to come up to the cockpit flight deck. Take a look. I remember once this kid walks by and the guy I was flying with, he says, "Hey, do you want to come up front?" The kid goes, "Nah, I'm good. I got Flight Simulator." And it's like, and it was just, he looks at me and he's like, "Man, we're screwed. We're hosed." Kids, they don't care. It's like, it's
started
not
back in 1978 when the cab deregulated. It didn't show for a long time, but it doesn't have the same allure, the same cachet that it once did. It used to be wow. And now people go, oh,
they're like, yeah, I have Flight Simulator. I know that. I can play it. And the flight simulators are like as realistic as the actual airplanes. I mean, and kids know. I mean, I remember having kids would come up and they'd sit and the kid would be telling me things about this airplane that I'm like, how do you know this? Like he would know the whole electrical system and the FMS, and he's like, "Can I check out the FMS?" Yeah, you can check. He'd like program in the flight plan, and the kid's like 8. It's like they are so advanced. They're just with technology, and that it's not novel to them. It's like they grew up with iPhones. They grew up with FMSs and Boeings and Airbuses and fly-by-wire and fly-by-light. They know all this stuff. So the airlines really need to understand that if you don't provide pilots with what is important to them, you're going to end up in a really bad spot. You're going to end up in a really bad spot. The generational differences are there. You have to recognize them. And they're lazy, they're entitled. That's low intelligence. That doesn't explain, or that does not help that perspective. You have to figure out how to work with them and still work with a standard to keep safety up. And there's big issues. There's huge issues with standards.
Look at now let's talk about, they've made it to the big leagues, so to speak, whether it's a regional, national, or a major carrier. What kind of, what are the skills that even the current generation, if you want to say the current, the captains of today, dealing with this very different, like you said, the people that came before, they breathed and they ate it and they thought about it ever since they could remember. And there's a lot that today that isn't quite the case. They're there and hey, it's a good paying job, but if I find something better, I'm going to leave. How do you deal with the dynamic in the cockpit with such a different mindset of people coming in that aren't as focused on the aviation lifestyle as they were when they came on board?
If you look generationally, like at human factors and how human factors came about and crew resource management, I mean, it used to be, captain's authority, my way or the highway. And it was sort of, serving at the pleasure of the captain, which most aviators were from the military. So that was taught there. And so that transition over, it just carried into the civilian place. And so it was kind of an easy transition. Led to some pretty bad things. Led to some pretty, running out of gas. And, just don't, or keep telling the captain we're running out of fuel and he doesn't care,
more recently, Asiana with just didn't want to challenge the captain, lose face. I mean, even then.
So there's cultural issues, and these are serious problems. So the old days wasn't that great. I think the old days, a lot of people died, and it wasn't nearly as safe as it is today. I think that the safety issues that we're seeing now, and we can certainly talk to some of our human factors friends that work at the airlines, and our safety people. But what's happening now is there's a level of inexperience that's coming. I mean, these are people with very minimal time that are thrust into positions. And look, whether you're at a regional or a mainline carrier, it doesn't matter. There's no difference. The size of the airplane does not make a difference. It's the standard at which you are held to fly them makes the difference, and it's the same. There's no difference with that. Yes, there's more people, but you know what? In terms of moving people, you could make an argument that the regionals move more people because you're doing more legs. Unless you're at Southwest, then you're just doing a ton of legs anyways. But the issue is, I think, generationally, and I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for this, but the younger generation does not know how to relate as well because they are digitally distracted. And they have been. I mean, I see people giving 3-year-olds iPads. Saw a woman pushing a stroller down the street. She had 2 kids in the stroller, like a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I'm in Colorado, right? I'm out in beautiful, like, open spaces. There's wildlife everywhere. And she's pushing these kids in a jogger stroller out in nature, and both kids are staring at they each have their own iPad. People can't drive their car without a TV in the back for kids to watch. They got TV screens like it's an airplane. People can't be on an airplane without TVs or Wi-Fi. They lose their mind if the Wi-Fi is not working. Because God forbid you just look out the window or just read a book or just sit and stare and think for a minute. The digital distraction is pervasive. And what's happened is people don't know how to relate to one another. And I think it's starting to infect Gen Xers. It's affecting baby boomers. I mean, I go out to restaurants. I was sitting in a restaurant in Santa Fe last week. My wife and my child and I were sitting there eating in a restaurant, and there's like every single table, everybody has their phone out. Whether they were 7 years old or 80, everybody's eating with the phone propped up against a water glass. Like two people just having their phone. I'm like, why are you even out together? It was so depressing to me. I was just disgusted, and my wife's just like, "Stop it, calm down, stop it, just stop it." I'm just like, I was just losing my shit because
look at it within a family in the house, come into dinner, they text each other. They won't walk upstairs.
They're texting, standing sitting at the same table. Yeah. They're texting each other. Like, it's crazy. So what is this going to do to the crew environment? What's it going to do? It's not going to do good things.
Communication skills have definitely taken a hit. People don't know how to talk and deal with things face to face. I think people are becoming very conflict averse, very unwilling to do things because it's the old saying, the keyboard warrior. People will say things on a keyboard, whether it's texting or on a chat, that they would never do face to face, and they don't know how to resolve issues because it's just easy just to say F off.
Yep.
Go ahead, say it to their face, and all of a sudden people aren't as quick to do that.
It's the safety of being out of range. Yeah.
There's no safe area when you're face to face where you can be.
Well, and then people say, "Oh, I don't feel safe." Yeah. Right? Yep. It's like that.
Trigger word.
I don't feel safe. Yeah, I'm activated. I don't feel safe. I don't want to have this conversation. Look, there's a difference between safety and I just don't want to have this conversation.
Yes.
And I applaud the University of Chicago. They put out a statement that this is not a safe space. We are going to talk about hard things in classes.
Intellectual rigor.
We're going to deal with this. You don't get to claim, I don't feel safe, I want that professor fired, which has been happening. And it's gone so far to the extreme of both sides that we don't even know the difference between what is like real and what is not.
Physical safety is one thing, but people are trying to do intellectual and emotional, and it's because I don't agree with what you're saying or it runs contrary to what my belief is. So therefore, we can't have a conversation about it. Or going, sometimes, you know what? Sometimes it's directive in nature, and because of safety, this is not something we discuss. Or you can't just say, "Oh, I don't feel like it." And it's getting very difficult for especially the younger ones, because that's what they've known their whole life.
Well, it's difficult for the older ones to say, like, look, that's not acceptable what you're doing, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't care that you've always done it that way. That doesn't mean that it's acceptable. I mean, so every generation has their own work to do. But I think this distractibility is just severe. Now, one of the complaints that pilots have, and I had my own complaint with this, I'm sure you've seen it, is the access and the speed of digital delivery has made, how many NOTAMs and changes in flight operations information bulletins does the company need to keep bombarding pilots with it's like, it used to be you had a mailbox, you go to the mailbox, you pull them out, you get your JEP revisions, and you get the whatever the information bulletins are. It was like, once a week maybe, or a couple times a month. But now it is by the hour.
And just because it's been sent electronically doesn't mean
right. And they're saying, "Oh, you need to know this, and let's change things."
Yeah, send it.
Well, it motivates them to just keep making changes. Yeah. And it's like, maybe stop and think before you hit the send button if this is actually what you want, because there's decision-making information fatigue. We are bombarded with text messages with click bings and pops and notifications to death. And the companies are perpetuating this with their barrage of just nonsensical changes, or it's equivalent of including everybody on an email thread. It's like, stop including everybody on this.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go back to you talking about the digital addiction piece. At one particular airline, a student was going through and on their check ride in the simulator, right in the middle of it, the phone goes off, and the student that's being evaluated answers it, and the evaluator goes, "You need to turn that off." He says, "No, I need to take this right now." And he says, "You're on your check ride. You're flying." So, well, that's how we do it now. That's how it's done nowadays. So just I'll get to you in a minute. It was ended right then and there, but I mean that was the mindset. It's like, hey, this is normal. This is
what
if I want to answer it, I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer it, even though I'm in the cockpit.
Oh,
so to speak.
I have seen
crazy.
this. I have seen this in the cockpit, taxiing. Like literally, just getting off the runway,
no,
and they're
cockpit.
like on the phone to call for the shuttle van. It's like, what the F are you doing? Put that away. The van can wait. It's like we have done this. This is what we've done. Go out to dinner and watch.
Oh, God,
this is what we've done. We've become, and as I teach in V1, we talk about this in V1 as digital addiction, is use the technology as the tool, but if you don't, you will become the tool. Yeah. Because the technology is designed to sell you things, especially if you're using an application, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that you don't pay
Threads
for.
Now.
Right. If it's free, guess what they're doing? They are marketing crap to you for you to buy.
They're monetizing it some way.
With your attention.
Yep.
And attention is the most precious resource you have. It's the most precious resource you have.
And they can manipulate and
absolutely
influence, if there's a certain agenda. I hate to say it like that, but that we're getting off the track a little bit there, but it's such a dangerous.
I think we're on track. I think this is a real thing that we have to, and so the meaningful question is how is this impacting the environment? How is this impacting the way that we understand information, the way that we relate to one another? How do we self-regulate? I mean, they teach CRM. I teach individual resource management. That's what we teach at LiftAffect. And even at the V1 project is how do we start to self-regulate and be able to become more mindful of when we're becoming distracted, when we're getting suckered in, and how do we create better algorithms? How do we create better willpower so that we can create better habits that actually serve us and lead us toward the life that we want, not away from the life that we want? So there's so much that needs to be done on this front. But we have the generational shifts have happened. There's a difference. And just saying the younger generation sucks, the older generation's too inflexible is like low intelligence. We've got to be able to figure out how to merge this stuff and create maybe some adaptive tools to counter for this.
I'm sometimes at a loss because we've talked about this in the context of flying, but I struggle just watching it, like you say, every day in my family, and I don't see anything that's changing that. If anything, I see it accelerating. So, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I've seen any airline that I know of, and most like companies in general that have really taken any efforts to address it in a comprehensive way, other than just saying don't do it.
Yeah,
that's not going to solve it.
Nope.
That's not going to answer it.
Right.
The last thing I'm going to come back to on this issue, and we've touched on this 4, 5, 6 times in different podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
It's the digital addiction. That has been probably one of the single biggest changes that has happened in our life in the last 100 years, really. There've been a lot of inventions, but nothing that has changed us in such a way of having instant access to knowledge and crap.
Yeah,
for so
25
long.
years. It's 25 years.
It's hard to believe.
We've got things like the internet and personal computers and phones and tablets and social media and streaming. It's 25 years. That's it. Our relationship with these tools is new, and we are in the absolute infancy of learning how to use them. So we need to learn how to use them. I'm not telling you to go throw them away, but learn to use them correctly. And right now, I think it's like it's like it's like you went to the buffet and everybody is just overloaded and stuffed themselves with these things to the point where they're sick. They're physically, emotionally, intellectually sick from this. So we've got to figure out how to use these tools. So I have my own ideas on that. But
yeah, I'll ask you, where do you see this going? You're right. It's only been 25 years. It's hard to believe. Where do you see this going to? Because it's continuing. You know, do you have any thoughts?
This is a whole 3-parter, honestly. And I said we weren't doing any more 3-parters for a while. I think that we need to be able to make the choice of how we use these tools consciously. So, but here's the deal. You got to go to the user side of things. We've got a $7 trillion industry. There are, and I've talked about this in V1. There are only 2 industries that describe their customers as users: drug dealers and technology companies. So let's reflect on that for a second. If you look at the founders of tech companies like Jobs and Gates and the people that are, work on Twitter and did, I guess all those people left. They are very, very aware of how technology can be used and how it can be misused. And they're aware of the most important aspect we have cognitively, which I've said before, which is our attention. That's why they hire psychologists to figure out how do you capture your attention. So you better be able to put your attention on what you want when you want it. Think about the impact of flying an airplane. The ability to focus your attention on the right thing at the right time is the difference between a good outcome and a poor one. But if you're constantly paper cutted, if you're constantly slicing and dicing your attention by, quite frankly, people that understand your cognitive limitations, which are engineers that work for software companies, you're going to have a very tough time focusing your attention. And most of these technological giants, they won't let their kids use the devices that they invented and they push to sell. Think of it like itself
is the most telling.
Yeah, well, think about it it's like a preacher that's saying, "I'm going to preach this stuff, but do not follow any of these teachings." Don't I mean, like, can you imagine? That would be scandalous. This is common practice with technology companies. So they are there to splinter your attention and sell you shit. And if so I think some education and some awareness and then some actual suggestions on how to use these things, these amazing things, how to use them to lead you more toward what you want in your life versus just stuffing your face at the open buffet, filling your face with garbage, which is people staring at the whole family staring at their crap while they're eating dinner. That is, I think, where we have to start, is through understanding how do we use these things effectively and how do we not become a tool? How do we use it as a tool instead of be the tool? So much of this stuff is just a series of dopamine hits. It's exactly what it's designed to do. It's like cocaine. It's tapped into that spot and I mean, and they even talk about TikTok in particular, where they've figured out exactly how to meter just enough. Use the right color scheme, the way it scrolls, everything. And you don't even realize it's happening. No, you're a victim of it. Yep. You're a victim of it. So, wow, we just went into that place. But I think there's the airlines have to get their act together. Give me a call. I'll help you. There's a way to do this. There are ways that, and I mean, we can train this stuff out, but you gotta have, you need to be honest with people about what you're training them to do and what this stuff is doing to them. think when you show people, they're like, oh my gosh, they're kind of left with their head in their hands about like, I didn't realize I was being this. And the reality is, like, once you're pickled, you're pickled. That's how addiction works. There's no going back. So you need to understand, this is my kryptonite. This is where and so what do? I turn my shit off and I put it away. I leave it in the car, because if it's in my pocket, I've pickled my brain on technology. I will open it up and start pushing on it because I want the hit.
It's kind of like, you can't solve the problem until you realize there is a problem.
Correct.
And people
Awareness.
they're being manipulated and they don't even know it. So to them, there's no problem.
Yep.
What's the problem? They don't see it. And so education and awareness, like you said, is the key, because once you do that, now you can have a conversation and say, hey, do you notice these? Do you see this? Does this describe you? And all of a sudden they start going, wow, how do you know so much about me? I don't. But this is what happens when you're like,
we're not that unique. Yeah, we're not all that unique. There's trends. So yeah.
What I would challenge everybody out there, think about it and go, are you aware of what this unfortunate type of tool is doing to you and those around you? Because awareness is the first step. So they have a place, but it's not. It's the old saying. It's like the old saying. I want to work to live, not live to work. Same with the tool. It's there for you to use it when you need it, not for it to be I got to have it. I can't live without it. That's a dangerous place to be.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that.
So, with all that, my friend, I think we've come to another end. Any last thoughts you want to throw real quick?
Just put the stuff away. Think about how you can use this as a tool instead of be the tool. And awareness is the first. We're repeating ourselves, but I think repeating is worth it. Just put the thing down just for a minute and allow yourself to go through the withdrawal so that you can recalibrate and refine yourself. To be continued.
Yep. And I will say it's okay to be bored. So, with that, as always, please give us a thumbs up, shout out to your friends about us, leave a comment, a review. We take it all. We want it all. If you have anything, please send it to podcast@liftaffect.com. We thank you. We look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. Until then, have a great day and put it away.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the LiftAffect podcast. If you want to dive deeper into this episode and every episode, go to our website, liftaffect.com/podcast. If you're enjoying the show, we would love it if you'd follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate your support. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all with the ID Matthew McNeil. This show is brought to you by LiftAffect, a clinical mental health and consulting company that assists air carriers, corporate flight departments, pilot unions, and commercial pilots by providing comprehensive psychotherapy and mental skills coaching services to pilots with mental health and mental performance-related issues. Visit LiftAffect.com, that's LiftAffect.com, to book your free consultation. And finally, this podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of counseling, psychotherapy, medicine, or any other healthcare service, including the giving of medical advice. No therapeutic or provider-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and any materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining advice for any psychological or medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the LiftAffect podcast.